So hello everyone,
Hello.
welcome to the new day and new vlog. Today we have with us Muntasir, again our beloved, and you must have seen that in the previous videos we are discussing one by one the subjects that we gave exam for, the subjects that we took in our first semester. We also discussed what are the subjects that we took in the second semester or in the third semester. I think today we'll talk about one of the subjects that we took in our first semester, which is
Product line engineering.
yes. So the first exam that we gave was German, like Muntasir told. Then we gave QMQA that we discussed. Then we gave data visualization, and then our next exam was, and I think it was on 6th March, which is product line engineering.
Correct.
So we will discuss about the subject overview, about the exam and the experience that we had. So starting with the subject overview, how you felt about product line engineering, and if you can give some details about the subject, like the credits or
So subject name, as we said, is product line engineering. That falls under the major software engineering.
software engineering.
And that's one subject I would suggest to take. And this subject is taken by Martin Baker.
Yeah,
And
Professor
for
Martin Baker.
Professor Martin Baker, he takes class. The classes are usually 1.5 hour, and every 2 other classes later, I think
He take the exercise classes. He discussed that first. That
Discuss that there is exercise classes,
Hmm.
and the subject is 4 credit.
Hmm.
So you attend the classes, you attend the exercise classes.
Yeah.
It can happen. For our case was that, but it can happen for your case as well, that exercise class and lecture class is continuous. So
Correct.
after that lecture class, you have immediately the exercise class.
Hmm.
And sometimes the professor takes it longer.
Yeah.
Like 1 hour. The exercise class are usually 3 hour class. So it can happen that 1 hour lecture class, 1.5 hour lecture class, and 3 hour exercise
So
class.
yes, and one point to add here. In our time, what used to happen was, subject is 4 credits. So professor discussed with us that okay, I'll take lecture. We can decide that okay, you can attend lecture online, but for exercises one must attend that in person, offline.
Correct.
So suppose not every week he used to take, but he used to say, although the exercises were every 2 weeks, although they were decided that
Decide all the time.
every week one exercise class he would take, but he said that I'll take 2 extra exercises together.
Correct.
So exercise 1 and 2 used to happen together. So that class used to extend till 3 hours
Correct.
instead of 1.5 hours. So it happened with our batch, but it might differ
It
in
might
your batch.
change because,
Yeah.
for example, as far as I remember, for the first times it was like 1.5 hour exercise class, 1.5 hour lecture class. It was good, but in the last weeks of the before the exam, it was like that's kind of 3 or 4 hour class. Even though the professor gives some breaks in between,
Yeah.
like after lectures, after exercise class. And in the class is most of theory. Like he said in the lecture, it can be you can attend online or you can attend offline. But
Yeah.
the exercises are offline. So while doing the classes, I would say the classes are mostly theoretical. The
Correct.
exercise, I would say, not that much theoretical. Even though there are a lot of theoretical points
Yeah.
in the exercise slides. But the professor also shows us some calculations, for example, cost calculation. in
Cost
the first
calculation,
2-3 slides.
Yeah.
And then there are definitions
Like white box model or the black box
black
model.
box model, and then again there are some product feature metrics, and you have to draw some diagram, you have to you have to write some requirements from the given state. So those kind of various things is shown in the exercise.
Yeah, so if we just go one by one, then I think by that way, like the subject is a mixture of theory. Some of the questions are application based. So sometimes it used to happen that it's an application based theory. So there is a scenario given. Suppose a company scenario was given and you had to write requirement for it, right? Maybe one of the questions, or you have to draw product feature metrics or feature model you have to draw, or sometimes some code gaps you have to fill. So I would say that when we used to attend the exercise classes, then I think it is quite important, and specifically for product line engineering as well. Although whenever we discuss this point, we say that exercise classes are important.
Classes are important.
And one of the reasons, and I'll jump to the exam part, because when we sat for the exam for the first time in product line engineering, before the start of the exam, the professor said this thing very clearly, that if you have attended exercise classes, if you did exercise classes, you are very good to go with the exam.
Correct.
This is the, I think you remember he said that
Yeah,
in our
yes,
lecture
yes.
room. And why he said so, we felt after giving the exam, because around, I think if we just gave up
So I would
estimate.
say for preparation, For preparation, what we did was we downloaded all the previous year questions from Kai, and we solved the exercises question as well. So our we had two methods. One is previous year exam questions, that answer is sometimes relevant to exercises, sometimes to the theory part of the lectures, and we also did the exercises and went through. So just like he said, when we went to give the exam, we saw that all of the questions is either from the previous year questions, the similar pattern, or it's from an exercise. You have to solve it. So if you have good grasp of exercises and the previous year question, you are good to go.
Yeah, and we are talking about the estimate as well. So if you tell the estimate that how much came from the previous year questions or the exercises, like you said.
So I would say not that much I remember, but there was the exam is actually of 100 marks, but you don't need to write 100 marks. The time is 80 minutes. And to get one, you need to answer 80 marks. So that means 1 marks for 1 minute, something like that. So when you are answering question, if it is a 5-mark question, just keep in mind it should take 5 minutes. If it is taking more than 5 minutes, you are doing it wrong.
Correct. So I think once again I'll jump to the estimate point. He discussed the exam pattern. If I tell about the estimate, then I think that roughly most of the paper came from the exercises pattern. I would say especially for product line engineering, because I think out of 10 questions, 6 or 7 or something.
As far as I remember, there are quite handsome part from previous exam questions as well.
Previous year exam questions as well. So both I'm saying that most of the paper I think came from.
Just like if you have solved both of these, you may attain almost more than 80%, I would say. 80 to 85. Or 90%, I would say.
So I think for our time this was the case, and professor also mentioned this point. So I think the number that we are telling 70-80%, it's just an estimate to tell that most of the paper came from previous year questions and the exercises that we used to attend. So if you are attending exercise classes, I would say suppose if you are trying to attend lectures, but if you are attending exercise classes good enough and you are solving previous year questions, then I think you are good to go with product line engineering, which is a 4-credit subject. And in the exam paper, the questions were mixed, but again some of the questions were theory, like direct definitions or direct theory questions, so you have to learn some theory. You can see that in previous year questions as well, what is the pattern of the questions. And also about the application based questions, it's like sometimes you have to write a requirement, draw a feature model, draw a feature matrix, or from a feature matrix you have to implement some points. So but the crux is that this thing professor also mentioned, that 100 marks paper will come. So as he said, if you score 80, you will get 1. Although for some of the subject this thing used to happen that their marks are relative, given there is a relative marking. But for product line engineering, I think it is fixed that
80 marks 1 point, so you have to answer full.
And this is also quite different, that 80 minutes you have all in all. So like 1 minute 1 point, something like that, you have to give the exam. At least in our time it was the case, and then you are good to go.
So one more point that we will share here that usually we don't cover, that is after the exam review. So after giving your exam, for us it was quite some amount of students. So the professor said we might take some time to review our paper. So I think it's around 2 or 2.5 months, something like that.
Correct.
It can vary, but usually after that you will get a time slot that on that day your exam paper will be reviewed. You have to go there and see how the professor has marked you. I would suggest do go there, do attend that session and see how your exam paper is marked.
Correct.
Because in the class lecture the professor said that if you have answered some questions and I didn't give you the mark and you think this is correct, do attend the session. After when you are doing the exam review, explain it to me. If I think your logic is correct, maybe you haven't expressed it properly, but your logic is correct, your concept is clear, so I will give you the mark.
Correct.
So that happened, I think, for both of us. For some question we solved the exercises, we thought of some way and we have solved it. When we attended the paper, we saw that for some question there was some mark deduced. We discussed the professor that I wanted to solve it like this way, this is what I meant by writing this, and he said okay, your logic is correct, your answer is correct, maybe you haven't properly formatted, so I will give you the mark.
Now it's a very good point that he highlighted. Adding to this, I just remember one thing. I have made a vlog when I went to the exam review of product line engineering. I'll post that link as well in the description and you can see that vlog as well. Now adding to this point, it is, I think I agree to it, because the thing is, some of the questions, suppose it's a table that we learned, right? To for one of the questions, one of the theoretical question, it was a table that we learned from the solutions or from the exercises. So we made that table. Suppose we didn't got enough marks for that. Now if you show that answer in the exercises solutions that the professor uploads, then he might increase your marks, because if you have some reference from where you wrote the answers in a precise manner, and if you can prove that thing, then he increases the marks, or he might agree to that thing. Also, the thing is that why professor said this, I think one of the reasons is that since in 80 minutes you have to answer at least 80 marks, so 1 minute 1 mark. So for some of the answers, suppose it's a 2 or 3 marks question, then you have to write that in 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
So you might write that in a crisp manner or in a brief manner, and then and there you might, means you have some explanation in mind and you wrote 3 points. So now if you can explain that explanation that you thought at that time to the professor when you're reviewing your paper, then if he agrees, he might increase your marks. And this happened with some of the students. So I think this is a good point, that after giving the paper, it is recommended that you go to the exam review and can try your best to explain. I hope you don't find need to explain professor, but even if you did, then he might accept that and he might increase your marks. So I think you get some idea. Specifically for product line engineering, we highlighted 70 or 80% calculation.
But I think that
can vary from batch to batch, but this is our experience and our what we thought is the case. Just to highlight this point, that most of the part came from previous year questions or the exercises during our time.
It can happen the professor might ask some questions from the lectures as well.
Yeah, so it might change, the pattern might change, but I hope you get some information. We tried to share as much information as possible, and it's a 4 credit subject you can take in your major software engineering, along with QA that we previously discussed, and as we told earlier, that data visualization we took in our supplement block. So this is it for product line engineering. I hope you get some information. Rest like, comment, share, subscribe. It doesn't take much time. Bye bye. Ciao ciao. Namaste. Chalo.